Hey guys, how are you doing? My name is Juan, and today I want to talk about The Luminaries by Eleanor and Catton and why you should definitely read this book, even if you don't want to read this book, even if you have no desire whatsoever to read this book. I still feel like you would benefit as a reader from reading this book. It certainly benefited me, and I will tell you why. Tell me why. Well, firstly, I think it's important to address the issue of the intimidating factor. The intimidation factor is very, very strong here. This is one of the most intimidating books that I know of. At least for me, it's one of the most intimidating books that I have ever had sitting in my shelf. It's a book that I purchased around 3 years ago, and I never plucked up the courage to read it until now. And I actually ended up really enjoying it, and not just enjoying it, but I am so confident now as a reader. I feel like a stronger reader, a better reader, a more courageous, adventurous reader, and that's what I really took away from this whole reading experience, the growth that I had as a reader because of it. So this book is very intimidating, at least it was for me, for many different reasons. Firstly, it's long. It's really long. It's 832 pages long. It's like a Bible. Also, it has a bunch of characters, like so many characters. It has many different plot lines. It has a lot of things happening throughout the novel. It can be very confusing and very hard to piece everything together and make a sequence of events. It can be very disorienting. Also, the language is potentially intimidating because this book, even though it was written in 2013 and it won the Man Booker Prize in that year, and rightly so, even though it is a modern novel, it is trying to emulate a Victorian register. So it is written like a Victorian novel. It is written in a very beautiful, long-winded prose with a lot of descriptions sometimes. It has a lot of backtrack, a lot of history, a lot of exposition, a lot of retelling and retelling of events. So all of those things can make this book very intimidating. Also, the structure was very intimidating for me because the structure of the book, which is actually one of its biggest assets, is the first section of the book is super long. It is 360 pages long. It's like a novel in and of itself, and that is just the first section. And then the following section is half the size or half the length of the first one. So as you go along, you have this pattern that you can see in the cover, which is sort of reflecting or mirroring the lunar cycle. Each section is half the size of the previous one. So the first section is ridiculously long, and the final section is only 1 page long, and that is really cool. It's kind of gimmicky, but it's a gimmick that I really enjoyed, and I think it makes a lot of sense within the context of this novel. The story was also very intimidating, the actual content of the book, for me, because it's historic. I don't want to say that it is historical fiction, because I don't feel this is historical fiction because it's completely fictitious and made up. It just takes place in the 19th century. I don't think I would classify this as historical fiction, but it does take place in this historical 19th century context in New Zealand, which is a part of the world that I am completely ignorant about. And it focuses on the gold rush, the whole, gold enterprise, the whole idea of these people who are in business. It has a lot of business talk, financial talk, legal terms, things that I know nothing about. And that was very intimidating. So all in all, this novel was just like intimidation personified. And yet, I am so glad that I read it and so strengthened by the experience of reading this book. I think my biggest advice for someone who is a potential reader of the Luminaries is you have to be very careful with the opening section of the book. As I said, the opening section of the book is like a novel. It is 360 pages long. It is very confusing. We get so much exposition of each character. There's so many things, so many sequences of events that are narrated in this first section. It becomes a lot. It becomes very difficult to retain in the brain. It becomes very difficult. However, the rest of the book is very propulsive, it's very readable, it's very friendly and accessible, and it becomes really, really fast paced. So fast paced, in fact, that I read this huge book within a week, which is nothing. I am a very slow reader myself. I'm really a slow reader, and I read this within a week. The final sections of the book, I sped through. I read like 200 pages per sitting. It became very, very fast paced in the end. But my biggest tip for you as a potential reader of this book is be careful with the opening section, because I think it's very disheartening. I think it's very difficult to become frustrated with that opening section. I knew that I was very annoyed and very, very frustrated by how difficult it was to understand at first, but everything becomes easier and more accessible later. So even if you feel like a complete stupid person at first, hold on. You will get your bearings later. So let's talk about my biggest problem and my favorite thing about this book. My biggest problem, the biggest beef that I had with this book is that I found the book quite inconsistent in terms of the rhythm. The first section was very difficult. The rest of the book was like so fast and so propulsive. Another issue in terms of rhythm is that there are sections in the book that are very dialogue heavy. And those sections are so fast paced and so fun to read, very, very enjoyable. And you just fly, the pages fly. And then there are some passages, some chapters, some passages in the book that are so dry and not dry, but really difficult to decode, and they include so much exposition and so many different things that are explained that happen in the story, that it's very difficult to understand everything that is going on, and it becomes really confusing, and you have to reread certain passages just to make some sense of things. So that's a problem that I found with the book. Sometimes the entire book is like a wheel. It's like a mechanism, and sometimes it's just working at top speed, and then it completely stops, and then it's like a turtle going forward. And that's interesting to think of this book in that way. But yeah, that's a problem that I had, the rhythm. However, what I loved the most, my favorite part of reading this book was reading the book, was realizing that I could read a book as intimidating as this one. Considering how scared I was of reading this book, I cannot believe that I ended up enjoying it as much. The experience. Not so much the story. I mean, the story is good. The characters are great. The content, the language, everything in terms of content is great. But my favorite thing was the experience, realizing that I can read a book like this one, and that it can be fun, and that it can be fast, and that it's not a big deal. So that's my favorite part of reading the book. and realizing that I could read the book. And as I said at the beginning of this video, reading this book has really made me more confident. I have confidence in sunshine. I have confidence in rain. I have confidence that spring will come again. You'll have to agree. No, those are not the lyrics. But I'll make them see. I have confidence in me. Well, I had to do it. I had to do it. So that's exactly how I am feeling now that I am finished with the book. I am so confident. I feel like a much stronger reader and a better reader, and I want to take chances. I am motivated to, pick up a Charles Dickens book now. I want to read something classic, something big, something heavy. I don't care, because I can do it. And if I can do it, so can you. Because I am not a very adventurous reader. I am not a very, I'm not a very adventurous reader. I am easily scared and intimidated by books that are long, or that could be confusing, or that are classical, or that have a particular writing style. I can be a very scaredy kind of reader. And reading these sorts of books is exactly the kind of experience that makes me realize you can do this. You can do it. So, that is my review and recommendation of The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton, winner of the 2013 Man Booker Prize, the longest novel to ever win the award by the youngest author to ever win the award. I would rate this book overall maybe a 4 out of 5 stars. Maybe from 1 to 10, I would give it an 8. I think it was very enjoyable. I did have some quibbles with it, but the experience was so uplifting and made me feel so confident that it's a book that I definitely recommend. I think you should read it.